All right. You're live. Hope you guys are doing well. Happy New Year. Hopefully it was a good one for you guys. Hopefully you were safe. Didn't do anything crazy or get caught out. Apparently some bad stuff went down in New Orleans. Prayers go out to those people. For anybody that was injured there. Sorry to hear about that. I'll say that's a risky run. On New Year's, there's always, unfortunately, people that make some poor choices, and that's why I encourage people to always just have a ride ready or an Uber. I can't really prevent what went on in New Orleans. We'll see what all shakes out from there. They're supposed to have the Super Bowl there, here in just a few weeks. So I don't know, maybe extra security. We'll see what things they put in place. But anyway, hopefully you had a wonderful evening last night. Got to toast the new year, set your intentions today for 2025. We put out a resource there in the Mastermind for people that are part of that group, just setting goals, right? So, I talked a little bit about this on the last live on Monday, but if that's something that you guys would be interested in, anybody in the Mastermind gets that for free, just a sheet. It's pretty simple. It just goes over OKRs for each kind of area of your life and how you can set intentions and actionable things that you would work toward over the year. Hard numbers. I like to set SMART goals, things that are measurable and have a deadline. That way, if you met them or not. A lot of people make arbitrary stuff like I want to make more money, or I want to, have a better relationship, or whatever it is for their New Year's resolution. But they don't define it and give it specifics. And I've found in my life that when I define things and I get very specific on them, I'm a lot more likely to achieve them. Another metric that I did mention, on Monday, end of the group, was that if you just write things down, 62%, you're 62% more likely to achieve your goals just by writing them down one time. If you look at them every day, it's going to be a lot more likely that you're going to get there too. So hopefully you took a little time out today and did that, and you're excited about 2025. Wish you the best in your endeavors. Hopefully, if you're invested in crypto, which I'm sure a lot of people here are, a lot more of your goals and the milestones that we've been looking for will be hit here, in Q1, as we do have the inauguration of Trump coming in and a lot of the new administration swapping over to more crypto-friendly people, especially there at the SEC. We have Care Bear stepping down on the 20th. Could it happen before that? Could we see, a settlement for the lawsuit or something else, kind of shake out? Not going to count any of my chickens before they hatch, but we have Ripple's tender offer ending. They make the distributions for that on the 21st or 22nd of January. You have up until the 14th to participate if you do own Ripple equity. If you do want, up to 5% of your shares at $125, which is what they're paying on their tender offer, it's a good time to go ahead and reach out and get that going if you're going to participate. We do run private deals in the Mastermind. I can't talk about which companies we're invested in, but you might could guess. And so if that interests you, would love to have you in there. The 1 month for the Mastermind, if you want to go check that out, it is at mastermind.beyondbroke.com, and you put in the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO at the end when you go to check out, and it will make the price $0 for the first month. You try it out, see if it's something you want. If it's not, you didn't lose anything, and you got to see a lot of the people that we've been able to work with there, and the culture that's been built. Really excited about this year and what we're going to be able to do in that group. Without further ado, we will go ahead and hop into the questions here. We got a good number of people here on TikTok as well as YouTube and Twitter. So appreciate you guys again taking time out of your evening to ask great questions, and we'll go ahead and jump into them. We got DMP. Interesting name. It's almost like DNP. Hey Jake, when will we see the private and public ledgers merge, and do you think it will have a price effect? I think it'll be the other way around. I haven't heard much talk about this lately. I believe it's still a subject matter. Yeah, I would agree. So for people that don't know, there are private ledgers attached to the XRPL where they've run beta tests with banks and institutions, and they've piloted things there. People discuss, the assets on those networks being much higher values than, what the mainnet shows for XRP. That can't happen. You can't have XRP at two different values. The actual asset itself, you could have an imitation or a trial network for the private ledger set up with another asset that's settled in that ecosystem. It'd be an issued asset on the XRPL. And you could have trust lines between separate parties that wanted to interact in those ecosystems. I don't think you're going to see payment flows or those two, the private and the public networks, merge until there's enough liquidity in XRP for it to be able to facilitate those transactions. And so for me, I think it's price first. And I think they will drive price up through a scarcity type situation where the exchanges all need XRP at the same time, along with the ETFs being launched. I think that it will, put a short squeeze on XRP basically, and you'll see huge price momentum to the upside. We've already started to see some price action today, which has been nice after, moving down for the last month here. We had the big run up on December 2nd, that Sunday, which was nice. And since then, it's just been choppy and kind of down and to the right. But we have seen, 15 or 20% to the upside today. So that's exciting. But I think it's just, the tip of the iceberg for where things are headed. So hopefully that answers your question. And it was a good one. CS2424. When looking at XRP rich list, I noticed the number of tokens needed to be in the top 3 or 4% went down. Is this due to the top 1% buying more? Not necessarily. There's a couple different dynamics there at play. It would likely be because there are more wallet addresses. So more people are buying XRP and creating native wallet addresses for cold wallets. We've seen a big jump, almost 100,000 wallets created in the last month here. We're at 5.8 million wallets on the XRPL. The more wallets there are, the more there's going to be in the top 3 and 4%. Because now it's 3% of 5.8 million instead of 3% of 5.7 million. So, you got another, 80,000, 70,000 wallets, or 8 or 7,000 wallets, something like that. 1%, right? So I guess it would be an extra 6,000 wallets-ish. They're going to be in the top, percentages, each percent. So anyway, that's why those things are shifting. But that can also be supply and demand dynamic for larger accounts purchasing. But I would venture to say it's likely the number of wallets and just the amount of wallets in each category increasing. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. We have this at the top here. We did launch our book. We mentioned this Monday. If you guys would go check it out, that would be much appreciated. It is free until tomorrow. Actually, I think through tomorrow. They're on Amazon and on Kindle. If you want to go check it out, is Wealth in Numbers. Max Avery and myself published that book. And you can just Google Wealth in Numbers Max Avery or Wealth in Numbers Jake Claver, and it should come up. You'll be able to download it. If you would leave us a review, it is much appreciated. We have Crypto Pump. He says, hey, just wanted your thoughts. Happy New Year's, by the way. On random price movement today, if it's still speculative or you think anything is in motion. 20%, like that's some volume. It could be some institutions stepping in here and buying some up before things do kind of roll on. We'll see, right? I was hoping that Japan would kind of move before the end of 2025. Their markets are alive right now, and it doesn't look like we've got any movement on the yen that would be, enough for them to raise interest rates or move things along. It's a 157.3. Really, when it gets over 158, closer to 160 yen per US dollar is where I think they will intervene and have to raise interest rates. Until then, they'll just sell dollars for yen, and then push the supply and demand dynamic like that. We've got a couple of people over here on TikTok. Why is it that Bitcoin does up or down XRP and the rest of the market is... So most of the market follows Bitcoin. And the reason for that market dynamic is that the majority of the market is traded by bots that take out long positions on Bitcoin. And when they get liquidated, there's a sharp down move in Bitcoin. It doesn't even have to be a sharp down move. And they get liquidated. They have to pull from capital from other positions that they have in order to cover losses or shore that up. And so they'll sell off other positions in the market in order to be able to do that. And so that's why you see the whole market, kind of move is in the same pattern as Bitcoin. And also why Bitcoin, moves like 5% and some of the other ones move a lot, because Bitcoin's much more liquid, has a higher market cap. It takes more money moving in and out of it to affect the total market cap and price of Bitcoin through the exchanges. A lot of the people that we work with use TWAP or VWAP, which is a time weighted average or volume weighted average for how they buy. So they have millions of dollars that they average into the market over a period of time, and they do their best to not move the price using that process. So institutions are buying a lot of these assets through that mechanism without shifting price massively in either direction. So that's why you have the market dynamic that exists right now. Industrious Metallicus Cuz, it's a good name. He says the digital asset allocation plan was just signed before the end of 2024. Is it necessary to have it time-stamped or notarized? Do you have good crypto accountants? We do have good crypto accountants. If you worked with us to get that form, you should have received an email with 4 or 5 CPA firms that we work with or recommend. And, happy to pass that to you if that's something of interest. No, don't necessarily need to notarize it. You just need that form filled out. You need a snapshot of your wallet from yesterday for the amount that was in it at the time, that the form was signed-ish. And then lastly, you just want a spreadsheet of all your wallets and the entities that own them, along with the cost basis that you're going to attribute to each one of those wallets. And that should be calculated. You should go back and average the total amount of purchases over time in order to get that cost basis. And it should be weighted based on the amount of assets that you purchased, for whatever price. Brad Garlinghouse had a tweet today, which was nice to see. He thanked the XRP family and the rest of the crypto community and was excited about 2025. I always like when Brad's bullish. Obviously, his prediction for a $5 trillion market cap in 2024 didn't quite get there. I think it was at 3.1 or 3.2 on the last day of the year. But I do think we're going to, potentially far exceed that $5 trillion number here in Q1 of 2025. We got Honest Aim. Thank you, brother. Thank you for the super chat. He says, appreciate all you do for little guys. Janet and I talked U.S. default before Trump takes office. Quite possible. Your thoughts on XRP utilization? Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they didn't move the debt ceiling up, how that would impact things. I don't know if they could run like an executive order at that point, or like keep Biden in office and push off the inauguration. Maybe there's some funny business with that. We'll see just how things play out. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the implications if they don't move the debt ceiling and what that will cause, but I'm sure it probably plays into what you discussed there and things rolling over to this new system. Looking forward to seeing you Friday, by the way. We got Sweet Potato. What specific events would you need to happen in order to see XRP reach 4 digits? And could these events take place before the end of 2025 or even within months? Yeah, as soon as Japan raises interest rates and the reverse carry trade starts to unwind, a lot of the domino theory that I put out back in March will just go. So that causes huge problems for markets, especially treasuries. Treasuries get dumped on the market. They have to rush stablecoin regulation through. Stablecoin regulation gives full clarity to XRP. XRP ETFs get approved. They also sanction Tether. Tether now becomes illiquid across all the exchanges. They have full clarity on XRP. They use it to drive price up and provide liquidity for all the trades, just like Shane Ellis theory. And then you could have a knock-on effect where they use it to settle the back end of the stock market through Project Ion and the DTCC with R3, which was developed in 2022. And I think, all of those things culminating would lead to a $1,000 plus XRP. XRP looking like a great buy. Better late than never. Yeah, glad to have you here with us, part of the XRP family. And some people bought at $2.60 and then sold at $2. Were frustrated after the month and didn't see any more price appreciation. You always want to be in before price goes, right? So when everybody else is selling and then it's kind of not in vogue. What does Warren Buffett say? Be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. I try to live by that. Kevin, thank you for all of the memberships here in the chat. We got another super chat. Conservative asset class. Just talking about crypto. It's an interesting name to be talking about crypto. Howdy, Jake. Since when did stablecoins become important aspects to U.S. economy? Also, would you ever provide broker services like Caleb and Brown in the future? So we currently do for our clients at Digital Wealth Partners. We source liquidity through Anchorage as our partner in that capacity, provide institutional custody with them, and we are able to execute any size trade at the lowest cost of anywhere. It's 20 basis points with no spread. So if that interests you, would love to work with you. Your assets do have to be north of $500,000 to work with Digital Wealth Partners. But if you are in that group, would love to have that conversation. You're just going to want to go to digitalwealthpartners.net and they can work with you. And again, you get all those benefits, try to provide as much cost savings as we can for our clients. And then stablecoins, I think will become a huge part of the U.S. economy. I think you'll see large corporations like Facebook, Amazon, Google, Tesla, on and on. Anybody that's holding U.S. treasuries on their books and they want to issue a stablecoin, I think it's a great way to do it. You can incentivize people to hold your currency and pay them a yield, and that gives you more and more capital over time to be able to use in your business. Starbucks does this through a quasi deal with gift cards. So I don't know if you've ever bought a Starbucks gift card. So Starbucks will probably have a stablecoin too. But what they do is most people buy the Starbucks gift cards and then they don't use them. So that's just capital that sits there that might be pooled in the future. I think it's like $1.5 billion that Starbucks has in their account for their Starbucks bucks. And they basically become a bank because of that. So I think something similar will happen with the large corporations, especially people that already have digital wallets set up like Google and Apple. They already have Google Pay and Apple Pay, PayPal. I think you'll see a lot of people issue stable coins. I don't know that we'll get a U.S. CBDC. That doesn't align with the values here in the nation, and Trump has already said that that's not going to happen under his administration. So I think you will just get private stable coins that are backed by U.S. treasuries, and the treasuries will end up being backed by gold if Judy Sheldon gets her way. So that's what I'm hopeful for. Tiger says I'll advise all my followers to follow Jake. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Hopefully, I like to get on here and just have a conversation and read good questions and answer them for people. And people seem to like, to listen to what I have to say for some reason. We work in the industry. We provide a lot of services. A lot of what I've built has been specific for myself. A lot of things that I wanted. And so we've, been able to create those partnerships and now we're able to offer those to other people in the space, which is really cool. We've got, how come trading bots don't work if the exchanges use trading bots? Trading bots work. That you just have to know which ones to use. We have some clients that have made a lot of money using trading bots and snipe bots. And the exchanges do trade against you, just like they do on Robinhood or Webull or any one of those other ones. Atlantic Living. I can't help but notice the ISO 20022 projects are specifically all performing very well today. Yes, they are. I know there is 8 of them, I believe. Do you have opinions on IOTA? It's rarely talked about. It's a good question, Atlantic Living. I think IOTA is a sleeper. It's an oracle. So it's like Chainlink, but it's for IoT items. So I think that is the oracle that'll be used for like robots paying one another in the future. So if you look at, Fetch and AGI and all those merged, I don't know what the new AI chain is, but I think it'll interact with that and other IoT projects, smart cities, as all this stuff actually gets rolled into the economy and used at scale for different things. I think IOTA will become prevalent in that use case for public uses where there's on-chain data that needs to be used inside smart contracts for transactions that has to be pulled from the real world. So, I think it's a sleeper. Not a whole lot of people talk about it. It's even hard to buy. And I haven't ever bought IOTA. I am bullish on it. I'm as bullish on IOTA as I am on Chainlink. And I'm probably more bullish on IOTA than I am Chainlink because I think IOTA just hasn't got the attention that it really deserves yet. And it is going to be huge again for the public sector. So I wouldn't say that there's 8 ISO coins. A lot of people kind of categorize XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, Quant, Algorand, IOTA. I guess that's 8. Only 2 of those actually have messaging standards and products built by companies. That's under Stellar and Ripple that execute that messaging standard that make it compliant. The rest of those are interoperable with the distributed ledger technology and real-time settlement that allows for, right? So they're kind of quasi ISO tokens. But, to your point, like a lot of people just make that association. So let's see here. I do understand this on a professional level. Let's see here. What are they? I guess this is back to the bots. They get enough buys in at a certain amount, and then they dip further to create bigger. Yeah, there's a lot of people that manipulate the market, and it is 90% traded by bots, and so is the stock market, right? And so if there's certain trigger points that are hit, they have options on stuff, and they liquidate themselves and sell out of those positions. And if you had a big enough candle to the downside on the stock market, you would just see continual liquidation. It would be a selling frenzy. That's why you see big moves down once they reach certain levels. We saw, a 13% move down in the stock market back in August when the reverse carry trade started to unwind the first time. And I think it'll be something similar when Japan raises rates again this next go. Gabe says, hey, Jake, if I wanted to put a property, it says priority, but I'm assuming it's property on chain to be liquidated in Anchorage account, could I do that? I'd like to take advantage of upside of assets instead of funding with simple fiat. You can borrow against the assets. They're in Anchorage, and we have a way to do that. We move it to a sub account and have a tri-party agreement with somebody else that provides either stablecoins or fiat against the assets without you having to sell them. So happy to talk about that. If you meant property, there isn't currently a way to tokenize your property and borrow against it. There was a pilot done by Ripple and HSBC, and I think 3 or 4 other parties in Asia. When we were at Swell in 2023, they talked about that pilot for a HELOC, so a home equity line of credit on chain. So I do think that that's going to come in 2025 here, especially after Brad's tweet today talking about real world assets moving on chain. So I'm hopeful for that, and I do think that you'll be able to access that liquidity. I'm going to say probably later in the year, and that's probably still kind of fast track. I'd expect it maybe Q4 of this year if it does roll out in 25. But I do think this is the year where we see tokenization of markets, real world assets, and a Cambrian explosion on the networks that are going to be used in those instances. So hopefully that answered your question. I'm not sure if I exactly got it right or not. If you need further clarity, just ask in the stream below. Let's see if I missed anything here on TikTok. Your video clip on market caps irrelevant with relevance with XRP was great. Would you explain that again, please? So we talked about this on Monday night, and I'll try to consolidate what I said then. So most companies are valued by market cap. They take the number of outstanding shares in the public market, multiply that by the price of each share and how it's trading, and that gives you the market cap or valuation of the company. And those shares are liquid, right? They're sold that way. It's difficult to, right now, I guess you could say that makes sense for crypto, right? There's a certain number of outstanding shares or tokens on an exchange, and they trade for a certain value. I could rig that, right? So let's say I minted 1 million of Jake token, and my mom buys a Jake token for $1. Well, now I have $1 million market cap because I have one transaction at $1 for my million supply, right? If I had 1 billion tokens, it'd be $1 billion market cap. It's kind of a simple example, but I'm just saying, like, it can be rigged, right? Depending on how many people are holding what. So it doesn't quite make as much sense here in crypto as it would for a public company. The main reason I don't think it makes the real sense is that these are networks or protocols, and they use a token to transmit value or pay fees on a network. I think there'll be some metric in the future that's a liquidity provision or some way to assess liquidity of a network that makes more sense for this. If you are trying to value it using market cap, people are going to be very surprised when these networks are moving value at scale and they're in the quadrillions for market cap, because you're going to have enough liquidity in the asset to move the transactions on the network. And a bunch of people are just going to be holding it, not trading it, right? So if you have the escrow, like the XRPL does, or if other people are just holding it as a capital asset on their balance sheet, those shares aren't on the market to be sold, right? They're taken off the market. And so that drives price up, and now you have the full amount of tokens, but only a small amount trading that pushes supply down and price up of the asset. Anyway, so I think that it'll probably end up being a liquidity metric that gets adopted for this. I don't know what that's going to be yet. I'm kind of working on something, to be honest with you, because I think there needs to be a better way to do this. And until we see adoption and utility of these networks, market cap's probably okay to look at. But when you're talking about utility of the asset and that driving the price, I think that that's a very different conversation, and market cap isn't quite as relevant. Let's see here. See if I'm missing any other super chats. Here we go. Appreciate you on the super chat. The Cali. Jake, except selling, could you please list all the ways you could make money from XRP, including percent returns and time until those are available? So we're working with two partners, Algos and 2Prime, which are institutional. They're not available to retail. They're only available through our partnership with them for our clients at Digital Wealth Partners. And they are able to create returns with your XRP as collateral. It never leaves your account. They, do hedge trades with the collateral. The XRP sits there, but they take, it's kind of like a pseudo account, right? So it's an issue or representation of value separate of the asset itself. And they use that in order to trade and produce returns. And then they pay that back to our clients minus their fee. So that should be live here within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Still looking at AMMs and how we can utilize those. We have a gentleman that I know personally here in Dallas that runs the largest AMM on the XRPL. You have to build a lot of liquidity in there before things can really take off. And I don't think it's at the place that you can do that yet. I think you need his bets, north of 50 million in liquidity before the people that originally started the pool could, kind of start to sell out some of their position to recoup their initial contributions. So we'll see if that's the case or not. I don't know if he's planning on doing that or not. That's just, we were walking through what made sense, and that's the math that he came up with. And I don't think we have any AMMs that are anywhere close to 50 million in liquidity on the XRPL yet. I think that's coming, and I think they're going to be much bigger than that in the future. So we're kind of waiting till things are a bit more stable in those liquidity pools. Liquidity pools also will be coming to the XRPL sometime between May and June is my expectation here in 2025. The amendments are XLS 64, 65, and 66. Also gives you the capability to borrow and lend against the liquidity pools for XLS 66. So excited about that. That's definitely something we'll be taking advantage of. We're also talking to Hugo at Flare and Networks and how we can work with them to be able to mint FXRP without any counterparty risk and use that to generate yield for our clients as well without their assets ever leaving institutional custody. So working on a lot of those things. The main two that should be available here in the short term and provide somewhere between 6 and 10% should be, late January is my expectation for our clients, which should be enough to cover their fees for holding them in custody with us. Is that staking? We met with another gentleman that uses XRP for restaking. Basically, again, they kind of use it as collateral to secure another network. Staking is more of like you're putting those assets in a pool, in a staking pool, and that's how the protocol is verifying transactions like Ethereum. Or you could have, delegated proof of stake, either like Solana or XDC, where the assets sit in your wallet and you delegate voting rights or the value to the pool, and then they're able to generate returns and pay you out a reward, but the assets never leave your wallet. I think the first one, traditional staking, will just end up being a security. It's a securities offering. You're giving up collateral to another party that is promising you returns on their efforts. Like that's a security. Delegated proof of stake kind of skirts that because you're not actually giving up the collateral. You're giving up the rights or the voting power or other things rather than the collateral itself. So I think, delegated proof of stake will end up not being a security per se, but I think pure proof of stake ends up being a security. Prometheum's already said that ETH is a security. The SEC won't give guidance on it, even though before they said that it wasn't in 2018. But again, the protocol has moved from proof of work, like it was in 2018, to proof of stake now. And so I think that's why, in my mind, I classify it as a security. We'll see. I don't have a crystal ball, and that's, just my opinion. Some guy on the internet. We got a couple more people on here. So I just mentioned again, up here, we got at the top, Wealth in Numbers. We just launched a book. If you guys want to go check that out, you just Google Wealth in Numbers, Jake Claver or Max Avery, who's a co-author on that book, published it. Max did a hell of a job with the book, and we got that out, on the 28th, right before the end of the year, which was a cool, feather in the cap for 24. But it is free for anybody that wants to go download it until January 2nd, which is tomorrow. So on Amazon or Kindle, again, you just, type in my name and Wealth in Numbers. We got this gentleman asks thoughts on Velo. I answered this on Monday, but I can go over it again. I have a video on Velo. Velo is a peer-to-peer lending protocol, and basically like tokenized stocks or equities on, but it's peer-to-peer and no broker-dealer. I think that it'll be interesting, for low-value trades. I don't know that they're going to allow high-value trades in that ecosystem. Bullish on Velo for moving value in that ecosystem and being a layer 2 on Hyperledger. I think it's a good project. That and Stronghold both, I think, have potential to get purchased by a larger party, or acquired would be the right word. Gonzalez Joe says, when do we find out about the SEC if they will approve XRP? I think it's going to take congressional regulation. Stablecoin regs provide full clarity for XRP and XLM as bridge currencies. And again, I think at that point, Paul will be moving in, Gary will be moving out, and it's likely that we'll see the SEC approve the XRP ETFs. And I think that will be, the point at which things actually really escalate in our favor that have been suppressed for so long. So the lawsuit, I don't know. Could it continue? Possibly, but that doesn't seem likely with Paul moving in, being, progressive and wanting to foster innovation here in the U.S. And remove the regulatory enforcement that the SEC has had over the space. CJ, he says, you're the best. I appreciate that, brother. Congrats on the book. Thank you. What is your take on floor price already totaled by the amount of banks and NDAs ready to go? It depends on who uses it, right? So I don't know that everybody will jump in all at one time, but it makes sense that they would. As soon as two banks start settling, anybody else that doesn't use XRP and the auto bridging and the AMMs is going to get left behind, right? They're going to be at a disadvantage. And so I think you'll see adoption very quickly. Obviously, you've got, Santander and a lot of the other, tech providers for all the banks already integrated with Ripple. And then Ripple has direct partnerships with, like 600 and something banks as well globally. And then if, they're integrated with Medico through that acquisition that they made in 22, they've rolled that to Ripple Custody now, and Zonix and Archax and a lot of the other large banks globally were utilizing that as their custody infrastructure. BNY Mellon uses Fireblocks or worked with Fireblocks to develop theirs. So that'll be separate. I think BNY and JP Morgan, a lot of the big boys, Citi, well, I say that, BNY, Citi, Bank of America, and Goldman, I think work with Corda and R3 to develop their infrastructure there. So all of that's interoperable with the XRPL. So just depends on who wants to jump in the pool first and how many people pile in after that. If I had to guess just on banks utilizing it for like FedNow and FedWire, here domestic in the US, you could probably see, I don't know, depends on how much XRP is available for that too. I guess there's just a lot of variables there for me to actually give you like a clear price, but 3 or 4 digits could easily make sense in that instance. Thank you, Kira, for the super chat. She says, thanks for all the love in the Beyond Broke Mastermind. Awesome. Glad to see that you're there. Any thoughts on Fireblocks as a potential competitor to Ripple? A few XRP influencers have put this on my radar. Yeah, they definitely are in the custody category. So they're the two main competitors in that space. I would say Medico or Ripple Custody and Fireblocks. Medico went after banks. So they provided the infrastructure on that side, whereas Fireblocks is more digital asset native. So it's not tokenized securities or real world assets. They're more focused on digital assets. And that's the infrastructure that BNY and some other large investment banks use to develop their custody infrastructure for digital assets. So I don't know if they've made that like migration of Fireblocks over to tokenized real world assets or securities. Doesn't seem like that's really the case. I think that they stay in their lane on the digital asset side. Most of the exchanges you work with use Fireblocks as their infrastructure. So again, I think a lot of people may have misconception here on who the software providers are and who the actual facilitators of custody are. So we work with Anchorage. They have their own proprietary software that they use to custody the assets, where they shard the keys and hold those across HSMs and level 4 facilities, which are hardware security modules. A level 4 facility has like armed guards and barbed wire and tons of firewalls and all the stuff to be able to keep people out or from hacking anything in that. So that's kind of the delineation. You got a bank that has the licenses in order to be able to provide those services to people. And then you have somebody that provides the software, and that is Medico and Fireblocks to the majority of the banks that have the licenses. So hopefully that explains, how those transactions work. And I don't think there's a winner. You said, HS or VHS versus Beta, which one wins? I think that they'll both be complementary. I think that there's a ton of market share for that use case. And I think markets tend to move to the Pareto principle over time, right? So there'll be somebody that has an outsized portion of the customers in a market. Google provides 80% of the searches globally. And then there's another 20% of the market that's made up by those other browsers, right? And that's changed over the years. But I think you'd see something similar in this space. Whoever the big dog is or ends up being over the next 3 or 4 years, whether that's Fireblocks or Medico or Ripple, they'll end up with like around 80% market share. And then you'll have Copper, Fireblocks, other people that spin up stuff and banks themselves or institutions that develop their own software in that other category of the 20 or 30% that's separate of the main provider in the space. So hopefully, good question, and I appreciate the super chat, and hopefully that was helpful. Another super chat here. We have Monopoly Money. Interesting. Why do Asian countries seem so much more bullish on XRP than Western countries? I think they just openly talk about it more, and there's regulation by enforcement here, and so it's been repressed, and kind of the black swan, or not the black swan, well, it could be black swan, the black sheep, right? It's kind of been passed off, and most people here in Western countries are more, I would say, libertarian. And the narrative around XRP has been the banker's token, right? And so a lot of people here in the West have adopted, Zcash or Monero or Bitcoin or other decentralized networks that were pitched as freedom. Whereas XRP is like, they're working with the banks, they're the bad guys, right? Whereas, the culture there in Asia is you really respect your elders. It's much more communistic, I would say, with a Western touch rather than the other way around. And so centralized authority, I think, would make a lot more sense to them because that's what they're used to, and maybe why they lean toward XRP and are so bullish on the integration of that asset. I think it has to do with culture at the end of the day, and just the beliefs of society in those nations. And that's kind of I don't want to say completely different than here in the US, but it's definitely different. Cobra, what occurred with the $100 XRP prediction at the end of the year? We, we're only one day in here. Japan didn't raise interest rates is really the deal. And we still don't have movement on the yen to justify it unless we have an oil crisis that pushes commodity prices up there. I don't know what they're waiting on. I think there's something they're waiting on. They've drug it on a long time here, and I don't see what else needs to be put in place. I mean, you've got digital identity on the XRPO, you've got oracles, you've got everything else built out, ready to go. Seems to be from AMMs ready to go. They've already issued stablecoins on the XRPL and the EVM sidechain, and ETH, through RLUSD. That pilot's good to go and it's working. So not sure what the holdup is, but again, I'm watching Japan like a hawk, and hopefully we see a little jump in interest rate or the 10-year yield over there, and then we'll know things are off. Daniel Trent, he says, what is the custody fee? So at Digital Wealth Partners, it's tiered. And it is an AUM fee that they provide custody and financial services for, right? So you get the advisory, you get the benefit of working with them, capability to earn yield, borrow against your assets, insurance on your assets, the security measures that they provide, all of that is rolled into one fee. And the AUM fee on anything less than 5 million is going to be 2%. Anything between 5 million and 10 million is going to be 50 basis points. And anything over 10 million is 40 basis points. So if you don't like a basis point, so 50 basis points would be 0.5% for reference there. So when the Fed, raises or lowers interest rates, they talk about, basis points or 0.5%, 50 basis points, 0.5%. We charge 40 basis points for anything over 10 million and 50 basis points between 5 million and 10 million, and then 2% for anything under 5 million in AUM or assets that are brought over. And again, I think that's completely reasonable with the yield that we should be able to generate people here in the very short term, irrespective of if you're accredited or not. Let's see here. See if I missed anything over here on TikTok. Do you think the government saying they have zero interest in making BTC a currency has hurt the crypto? No. I think Tether continues to print Tether and pad it, and the government, talks out of one side of their mouth and prints Tether on the other side. What is your guess for the cryptocurrency that's about to be used for X payments? So, Elon likes Doge. We'll see if that ends up being the case. I don't know how they could do that unless it's a stable coin and maybe they wrap it on the XRPL. Elon is, well, I'll let you guys in on a secret. I won't say who, but a very nice lady that I know, who I met through completely separate means than crypto. She's not in crypto, doesn't really deal with crypto, but brilliant in other financial matters. I was talking to her, and she said, hey, you talk about that XRP stuff. I owned some XRP at one time. And I said, oh, you did? Very cool. And she said, yeah, I sold it, though, because it didn't really move. But she said, you know who told me to buy it? And she would know this person. It's going to sound crazy, but she would know this person because of her background and where she was and she lived. I said, no, who told you? And she said, Elon Musk was who told me about XRP. So little nugget for you guys here on a public forum. I normally don't talk about that stuff except for in the Mastermind. And again, worst came to worst, I'm sure she would say that she said that if I was audited for whatever reason or people asked about it. But I don't like to disclose, personal identities. She's not in the space, wouldn't have any reason to lie to me about it, and definitely has had opportunities to participate on Elon's company's cap tables. So was interesting to hear her say that, right? So you mentioned, what platform would, Twitter use now that Elon owns it? I think it goes all the way back to XPay and PayPal and Peter Thiel. I think a lot of what he's done with SpaceX and putting the, satellites up in space in order to provide connectivity to the internet globally, I think has a lot to do with, banking the unbanked. And I think that he will likely, issue or wrap whatever token he plans on using on the XRPL to be able to transact on that platform, or on X or on Twitter. This is an interesting one. This is kind of a side tangent here. Favorite bodybuilder. So for those that don't know, I was a bodybuilder for about 10 years. I competed at the national level 3 times. Did never place very well. Top 16 each time, but 16 is the cutoff, and everybody just gets 16th after that. I was 14th, 15th, and 16th in the shows I competed in. Once in Vegas and twice in Miami at nationals. And I spent a lot of time researching bodybuilding, diet, all the stuff that goes along with that, and the history of it. I would say Danny Padilla, Tom Platz, or Lee Haney would be my 3. And I think either Danny Padilla or Tom Platz got robbed in 1981 when they gave it to Chris. Maybe it was 82. I think it was 82, actually. Chris Cormier. No, not Chris Cormier. He was the first gay bodybuilder. Openly gay bodybuilder. I can't think of his name right now. Dixon was his last name. Anyway, those would be my 3. So Danny Padilla, Tom Platz, or Lee Haney. I like that era before it started getting crazy. I like the aesthetic. I always preferred that. I competed in Classic when I competed. Did some shows in bodybuilding, but I didn't ever want to be 300 pounds and crazy looking. I would rather just, look like a supermodel. So anyway, good question. And I appreciate it. And probably some knowledge here for people that they didn't know about me. Kyle says, why do you think so many suggest that there's not enough money that will flow into XRP to reach these 3 or 4 digits? They seem to feel that they understand market cap, but are they missing something? Yeah, I mean, I explained the market cap deal a little bit earlier. For the asset to move value over a network to settle transactions, that's not how you would measure. Market cap's not measured that way. It's outstanding stock and the value that the stock is trading at. So to value a token on a network that's being utilized to settle transactions, you would probably look at something like email. Imagine every single email sent $1. How much liquidity would have to be in the email token to settle all of those transactions globally, right? It'd probably be pretty significant, especially if it wasn't that large of a supply that was available to do so, which I think will be the circumstance, when things kick off. A lot of people are like, oh, there's 100 billion tokens. Yeah, well, 53 of them are currently on the market. How many of those are held as the capital asset that aren't ever going to move? R3 only got $1 billion in the lawsuit, and they've sold some off since then. I think there might be, when I talked to Simon from Uphold last year at XTC in Austin, we talked about there might be 5 or 6 billion in retail's hands, and the exchanges is what he thought at the time. He thought that was about right. So, I think it could be even less than that. That's in retail's hands personally. But, if you look at the rich list, obviously the amount of wallets has increased since, 18 months ago. So, maybe it's closer to that 5, 6, 7 billion that's in retail's hands at this point. Still only 5 to 7% of the supply. Michael says Jake's answers are some of the most logical in cryptosphere. Just saying, I appreciate that, man. I try to come with like, this is how I would justify this, and this is how it would work, and try to make it reasonable. There's a lot of people that go off the crazy end, and sometimes I do too, right? I tinfoil hat and speculate on things, but I try to keep it grounded in some justified, logical reasoning. This person has asked, do you think XDC will go anywhere? I don't think it will be delisted and removed. I think that it'll definitely be around, if that's what you're referring to. As far as price action goes, I think, I better say this, nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please always consult with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. And I'm just some guy on the internet who gives his 2 cents and should not be listened to. You should always do your own due diligence before investing. All right, now that we got that out of the way, XTC, I think it's very reasonable to see it go to somewhere between $1 and $3, maybe even up to $5 if it got all of trade finance, which is its niche. It's having some problems with the network right now. A lot of the developers that I talk with are frustrated with some of the things. They did just upgrade some stuff the other day. I know I was actually listed in the tweet there with, I think, a tool, or actually it was Ritesh that put that tweet out for XDC for the upgrade, and Happy New Year. Appreciate him doing that and tagging me in the tweet. But yeah, I think, if it's adopted at scale for trade finance, which any type of contract that has value, I think could end up on that network over some of the other ones because of the smart contract capability and the way things are written. And I think some of the frustrations with other people are that it's curated toward contracts and trading the value of contracts versus underlying assets themselves. SBI owns 10% of the company. There's a lot of things going for XDC in that network. I made a lot of money on XDC years ago. I bought it when you could only get it in a wallet that you had to buy a bunch of ETH and send the ETH to the wallet and convert it to XDCE before they moved to an XRC20 token. So I've been around it a long time. I've been to Atul and Ritesh's offices there in Dubai. Good guys, extremely intelligent engineers. And I like Andre Casterman and TradeFi and what he's developing on the network. I think it's going places. I think it'll be around. I think it'll be used. I don't think it's going to see the same type of crazy price appreciation as some of the other assets. I think it's a niche use case. And as long as it's got enough liquidity, like there's 38 billion XDC, and they got a provision of I think there's 14 billion on the market. And then they incentivize people to validate transactions on the network through the delegated proof of stake, where you have to have 10 million XDC in a wallet in order to participate. That's something we're working on in the Mastermind for people. We haven't launched that yet, so I can kind of talk about that publicly. Any deals that are in progress or we're pitching there in the group, I can't talk about, but that is coming in the near future. So if you have some XDC that you'd like to put to work, I would love to talk to you about more of that in the Mastermind group. And again, for those that weren't here a little bit earlier, you can check out the Mastermind, get 1 month free. So no skin off your nose, no loss if you don't like it. Connect to Discord there. The code at checkout at mastermind.beyondbroke.com is Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Otter for month. That gets you 1 month free there in the group for Social or Carbon 1. And come in, check it out, see if you like it, participate in a way to earn yield on your XDC in the not too distant future. And if I want to obtain a return on my XRP, I have to have it in institutional custody. And being from Argentina, in my case, I must have an LLC in the United States. No, you actually don't have to set anything up here. You just need an entity in order to participate with Digital Wealth Partners. So anybody domestic here in the U.S., an LLC is the easiest way to do that. A trust is a little more expensive. It provides other benefits, that an LLC doesn't. If you're in Argentina, you can set up a corporation there. As long as you've moved your assets in there, we can work with you. We do go through KYB or Know Your Business. We still have AML, which is anti-money laundering, BIS, and OFAC. Make sure you're not sanctioned. But as long as you pass all those checks with your wallet addresses and your personal information, along with the business, then there's no issues. We can work with anybody internationally to custody their assets and earn yield on them through Digital Wealth Partners. If that's something you're interested in, you can go check it out. It is digitalwealthpartners.net. And you can email them at info@digitalwealthpartners.net. Let's see here. Could BuzzFrame, interesting name, could XRP be labeled as a special commodity, digital oil, with a set price on COMEX controlled? Would this allow governments to pay off their debt and also Nostra Vostra accounts get released? I like all of that. I like all of it. The only thing I don't like is a set price. And the reason I don't like a fixed price or a set price is because the volume over the network will support the price, one, and you need it to be dynamic as more and more things are tokenized on the network. So if you had a fixed price, you would have to reprice it again, similar to how they did gold in the early 1900s. So it was $20 an ounce, and then they moved it, they collected everybody's gold and they bumped it to $33 an ounce. And then I think they did like 37, and then they moved it to 42, and it currently sits at 42 on the Fed's balance sheet. So I don't think that they want to have to, globally reprice an asset all the time. I think that they would rather just leave it dynamic and let the payment flows to the transactions hold price stability of it. But everything else there you said is digital oil or a special designation, potentially controlled by the COMEX as a centralized neutral party for people to transact through as a commodity. I don't know if it'll be a currency or a commodity or a special designation, like you said. It definitely will allow governments to pay off their debts because it'll offset the deficits on their balance sheet if they're holding it when the price goes up. And it will eliminate Nostra Vostra accounts because of the auto bridging and the AMMs and the DEX built into the network. So yeah, I love it all. Actually just recorded a video on auto bridging today. I put out a thread earlier in the week. If that's something you guys are interested in, just kind of explains what the algorithm on the XRPL does and why it's so efficient and people would use it. Create 2116 says, "Hey Jake, Happy New Year." Happy New Year. Can you give your opinion on a spendthrift trust? I sure can. Is this a type of trust recommended by DWP? Sometimes. So these are all tools. All of these, so you got like a dynasty trust, you've got a waterfall trust, you've got insurance trust, spendthrift trust, irrevocable trust, asset protection trust. All of these trusts that people have productized. Okay, but at the end of the day, trusts are a contract. They're contract law. That's what they are. And they set up another entity that's holding assets separate of the individual that granted them, which is the grantor. And you'll have a trustee that manages those assets, and you'll have beneficiaries that are the beneficiary owners upon the death of whoever, there's a trigger event for the distribution of those assets. A spendthrift trust could also be just a spendthrift provision in another type of trust. Okay, so it's just, again, a piece of contract law. And what it does is it states that the beneficiaries or the people that end up controlling the trust cannot ever liquidate the original collateral that was put into the trust. They can only live off of the dividends or income that it produces, right? So if you wanted to shore things up and make sure that the next generation, if they don't have a ton of financial acumen. So as an example, let's say, when might you use this? You're in your 50s or 60s. Okay. You have children that are already in their 30s or 40s, pretty well set in their ways. Maybe they're doing okay, right? Like they've got a normal job, they've got 401k, like they're doing pretty well. Maybe they own some stocks, but they're not like super savvy when it comes to crypto or money. Okay. And you're scared that if they did get a lump sum, they would just sell the asset and then lose all the benefit over the long term, the appreciation, the income off of it, right? And so if you were scared of that, you would put a spendthrift provision in your trust. And you might stipulate something in there where there's certain qualifications that somebody had to meet in order to break that spendthrift provision, is the way that I would do it. So if you had somebody that had been an investment banker, or they met like a bunch of high level qualifications, had managed billions of dollars on behalf of somebody else, like you've got, some really good credentials, and that they have financial acumen, you might be able to break that spendthrift provision. But anything other than that, they would never be able to liquidate those initial assets that you put in. They would only be able to reap the rewards or the income that they produced. And we see that, spendthrift provision, again, just makes sense depending on who the beneficiaries are, how educated they are with money. Do you trust them to manage the assets? Are you scared that they're going to liquidate it? Like there's a lot of variables there that you might look at if you wanted to put that in there. And we can, marry that in to any type of trust if it's something you're interested in. David says, so you were into golf before getting into bodybuilding as a teenager? I was, yeah. If you Google me, probably find a couple things. So played with Jordan Spieth in high school, and he kicked my butt. As a sophomore, I was a senior, and I kind of lost interest after that. He shot the course record at Lakewood when he played at Jesuit. And so, I didn't know he was going to be number one in the world. But he beat me by I shot 77, 78, and he shot 62, 64. So you can do the math on that, like 27 shots over 2 rounds or something. Some of the best golf I've ever seen played. Chipped in twice both rounds, made almost every single putt, like just crazy. On greens that were running 14 on a stint, which if anybody plays golf, you would know that that's extremely fast and hard to keep your ball on. There was a couple shots where putts were like, if he didn't hit the back of the cup, it was going 50 yards down in the fairway. So anyway, I ramble on about that. But yeah, I played the Dallas Junior Open, top 3 there, like 3 or 4 years in a row. I should have won it. I choked a couple times. But I did win the North Texas PGA Junior Championship one year. I probably missed, 30 days out of 4.5 years that I didn't play a round of golf. So I got enough golf for a lifetime. Still play occasionally. When I go out, I shoot low 80s most of the time. Don't really have much feel anymore. I'm about 70 pounds heavier than I was when I played in high school. So touch really isn't there, but I still hit it a long way. I drive it like my long drive at the last scramble we had was 460. So I know that's going to sound crazy to some people. I have the putter to prove it. So that's what I got as the prize for the long drive. But yeah, most of the time, like 330, 340 off the tee. But yeah, anyway, yeah, would love to play, as things kind of progress here and I have a little bit more time, get back into it. Wow. Buzzframe, thank you for the super chat here, brother. He says, could XRP be labeled as this is the same one. I already answered it above. I'm sorry. You didn't have to send me all that money, man. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully my answer was quality enough that it, represents what you sent there. Any other super chats? Here we go. We got Storm Striker. Appreciate you on the super chat. Can you explain XDC, its potential, and what they are doing to possibly achieve it, and where I can find these shores of info? I kind of already ran that down because of one of the questions over here on TikTok. Basically, trade finance. So anything to do with receivables. People purchase things and have them manufactured overseas, and they have a contract for those to be sold here in the U.S. And sometimes they're illiquid during that period, so they need capital. and then they go to the market with that receivable that they already have in their hand. This person's going to pay for this. We've already got it ordered. It's going to be here in 90 days. I want a loan against this receivable for 90% of it, and then you get the rest of it when it shows up. So 90 days later, they already got their money. They pay back the loan with the rest of it, and they get an extra 10% above that. And there's a lot of family offices that play in that world, loan money on those receivables. And, if you turn your capital once a quarter, like sometimes it takes 90 days from China to here on a slow boat or on a tanker ship. It's the cheapest way to get it here. I think SpaceX will have huge implications for that industry. But irrespective of that, I do think that in the meantime, there's a lot of opportunity for XDC. And, if you had all the value of those contracts move on chain, Andre Casterman's already built out the messaging layer for all of this. Bravo to him. I do think that they're going to capitalize on that market, and we could see that here in 2025, 2026. So that would push, again, XDC, I think somewhere between $1 and $5 is very reasonable. Chad Otison. I probably butchered that. I'm sorry about your last name, brother. If we are making 8 to 10% with crypto in an LLC and trust through DWP, do you recommend creating a limited liability partnership for the revenue earned to keep the LLC assets separate from the revenue, or an S Corp conversion? I wish I could draw on here. So we have a full suite that we build out for our family office clients with a C Corp or a private trust company that sits at the top that manages the LLC that owns the assets. And then the Domestic Asset Protection Trust owns the equity of the LLC or a large portion of it and some of the assets. And then that way, if somebody were to sue you for whatever reason and get control of the stock at the C Corp, they wouldn't be able to just liquidate your assets and pay themselves back and leave you the worthless stock. Because if you hold your assets in a C Corp or an S Corp, that's a possibility. So I like where you're headed here, where you have a separate entity that manages the assets and generates revenue through that mechanism. And that separates that liability and also gives you the tax advantages. Definitely worth a conversation on an S Corp. It might make sense for your circumstance. Depends on the amount of revenue that you're going to be moving through there and how you're going to use it. Also, health benefits play into that, right? Who sits on the cap table of the C Corp? Who has the shares or the S Corp, right? But yeah, we have, different templates depending on your objectives, where we kind of started off as far as jumping off points with clients. And then, depending on how intricate you want to get and what all you want to invest in and how you want things orchestrated, if you want a foundation involved, things can get a lot more complicated, or they can be very simple. It just depends on the client. But yeah, that is all stuff that we can do and help you with if that's something you're interested in, Chad. Thoughts on exchanges like SushiSwap? Will decentralized exchanges be valuable even once CBDCs begin to develop? Will regulations hinder the decentralized cryptocurrencies? I think as long as they have a backdoor to review all the transactions in those ecosystems, they could persist, right? So, and the reason I say that this way is because Tornado Cash was just recently relisted and they lifted the sanctions, right? You got SushiSwap and PancakeSwap. I think a lot of the liquidity in the tokens that are swapped through those mechanisms will go away. If the majority of assets end up on the XRPL and Hedera and some of the other chains, I don't know that you'll need a decentralized swapping mechanism or a DEX. The XRPL has a DEX built in. So I think a lot of those other competitors are going to have a hard time unless they really just narrow down on one niche. Because right now it's just ICOs and crazy coins that people speculate on is really the only value they're bringing. I don't see what that's going to look like. But again, I think meme coins and ICOs and stuff may be around like penny stocks or pink sheets, and maybe that's the circumstance in which those exchanges will be bought by these larger institutions and used in that capacity. I don't know how you buy a DEX though. So again, with the XRPL having that built in and issued assets starting to be developed and put on that chain, I don't know what value Sushi Swap or Pancake Swap provide in the future. But again, I don't have a crystal ball, and there may be something I'm missing here. And if you guys want to tell me in the comments below, would love to get the insight on that. Over here on TikTok, how long do you think till XRP gains full adoption? What would the price be for full adoption? 3 to 4 digits for full adoption. I think here in 2025, that's highly likely if we see stablecoin regulation and a liquidity crisis. I asked about this XCN again. I need to do some research on it. I'll go check it out. I'll make that. It's on my list of stuff to do now. So I'll get to it, but I apologize. I don't have an answer for you. It's not something I have done enough research on to be able to speak to. King Crypto says, looks like Chainlink is going to work with Swift system and XRP. Yes, they are. They're an Oracle. You now have Oracles inherent to the XRPL. XLS 40, I think, was Oracles. Maybe that was Digital Identity. It was 33. I don't remember which one it was, but they passed it, right? So now there's Oracles native to the XRPL and Chainlink, the FTSO, IOTA. Other Oracles can be used in order to bring data on chain and participate and execute smart contracts. And Swift would need that for their transactions. So it makes sense that they would work with Chainlink in that capacity. So do you think XRP or XLM could freeze an individual's crypto based on carbon credits or medical decisions? No. Well, XLM, I'm not sure on. The initial account is not black holed, but on the XRPL, the account that issued the XNS, which is what it was originally called, is black holed. So nobody can freeze your XRP. Only issued assets can be frozen on the network. They can blacklist your wallet, and parties can blacklist it so that you can't send them transactions, but they cannot freeze your XRP, irrespective of whatever your credit score is or anything else. If you're holding it on an exchange and not in your own wallet, then yeah, our custody accounts can't be frozen. You're a signer on those accounts, so don't have to worry about that there. Now, if you're transacting or selling and we move them over to the exchange side, yeah, sure, but you could move it out of that wallet. We would legally have to sign that transaction if you ask to remove it. So government can't lock it down. They say I have multiple friends at work that believe that this is going to be a control mechanism. It will be for other people. If you don't own XRP, it will be for sure. Issued assets have clawback provisions, which banks would want, right? Like if they send it to the wrong account or wallet, then they need to be able to claw it back. They can't claw back XRP. They also just changed it where they can differentiate if the assets are in an AMM versus not in an AMM, whether they can issue a clawback on it, because that causes problems in AMMs. But XRP itself cannot be clawed back. It cannot be frozen. Only issued assets, and again, all these stable coins and real world assets and whatever else is tokenized on the XRPL will be able to be frozen by the issuer and also called back. So there has to be some control, right? Like if I'm a bank and I'm issuing a stable coin on the XRPL, I need to be able to, move things around in my own ecosystem or pull stuff back or make sure things are on the up and up. But it's on a public ledger too, so it should be transparent and there shouldn't be any tomfoolery or bad stuff going on. Go ahead and scroll down here to the bottom. Probably going to wrap it up here in the next 15 minutes or so, just to make sure I didn't miss any super chats. Thank you, Fire Dog. He said from Mickle Squad. What? I saw Mickle was live when I hopped on here, so I don't know if he's still rolling, but we have seen some price appreciation on XRP. So I'm sure he's rocking along over there. We're at 240, which is cool to see, and it looks like the next leg up here is going to happen within the next couple hours. So nice to see that the asset's starting to move again, and I'm sure people are excited for the new year and everything that's going to unfold here. He says, well, that's a profanity. I won't put that up there, but he says 260 tonight. Hope so. Oh, that'd be great. Could you explain digits? Digits are like next to the decimal place. So if I say 3 or 4 digits, I'm talking like 100 or 1,000 up to 900 or up to $9,999 would be 4 digits. And then 5 digits would be $10,000. I don't know if that's what you're asking, but that's how I took it. Super chat. Thank you, Storm Striker. They say, what do you think about Flare and its future? We like Hugo. We're talking to Hugo about how we can work with Flare Network. I think the main objective for Flare was the FTSO, or the Flare Time Series Oracle. I think that's why Ripple really worked with them and funded them, was to get that across the line so that they would have a way to incentivize good pricing and good price feeds on the XRPL. Excited to see that come to fruition, and F assets and all the other things that they've been working on for 4 years. I know everybody's probably frustrated. I think they got stymied. Look, like they took the snapshot in 2020 and then the lawsuit happened. I think that they've worked closely with Ripple, and whatever Ripple wants to roll out for their stablecoin and, a lot of the functionality of the XRPL, I think Flare was kind of like working with them in that capacity. And so when they got shut down, so did Flare. And that's why it's just been a beating, waiting for everything to roll out. But I do think we're here soon, here in 2020, and we are going to have our day in the sun as well as Flare. Mickle Mafia, very cool. So for those that don't know, we do have Mickle as an advisor for Digital Wealth Partners. If you have seen him, you like his content, you can work with him at DWP. If you have over $500,000 in assets, he can be your advisor. You just need to go to digitalwealthpartners.net and ask for Mickle. And, if you've got over $500,000 and you do have your assets in an LLC or a trust, would love to work with you, and he can be your advisor on the other side of price appreciation. If you do need that LLC, we are still running the promo for another day here publicly. You just go to digitalfamilyoffice.io, click the services button. There'll be an LLC formation. And we do it specifically for digital asset holding companies and digital asset trading companies. Just fill out the form. It's going to say $3,000 on the website, which is definitely worth it. We know other attorneys that charge that much or more for everything that we provide. So that is the EIN, articles of organization, registered agent, the certificate of good standing, the BOIR if you are going to need to file it, and the template for the operating agreement, which is the most expensive if you have an attorney drafted. If you want 50% off the $3,000, so you want it for $1,500, all you have to do is put in 50 off OFF DAG, like Digital Ascension Group, LLC at the end, and that gets you $1,500 for the LLC. Only 3 to 10 business days to get that set up. Sometimes it's faster. It just depends on the IRS most of the time. So would love to help you out with that. If you have more than, people always ask me, like, when does it start to make sense? I think around 50,000 in your portfolio. If you're around that amount right now, I think that's when it starts to make sense to go ahead and, incorporate and set things up and limit your liability and get all the flexibility that comes along with the LLC for taking profits and setting up insurance and, moving stuff into a trust. If it jumps up to 13.6 million, if you're single, 27.22 million, if you're married, and we'll work with you on all that. We advise people on it, help them out. So again, that's 50 off OFF DAG, like Digital Ascension Group, LLC, gets you 50% off the LLC on the digitalfamilyoffice.io website. And Living Legacy is also shared the coupon here. If you guys do want to go check out the Mastermind, it is mastermind.beyondbroke.com. You can put in the code here, Beyond Broke, all capitalized like he has it written, 1MO, and gets you a free month in social membership or Carbon One, whichever you choose. Same thing for you guys here on TikTok. Would love to have y'all in the community. The only thing I would ask if you are going to join the community is that you connect with me on LinkedIn. That's our vetting process. Chadwick, what's up, man? He says, you'd be crazy not to join the Mastermind with 1 free month. Mastermind, XRP's Gold Rocket. Awesome, brother. Appreciate the support and the kind words. We have almost 1,200 people in the community there at this point, and grows almost every day. Continue to build awesome culture. We do have multiple meetings like this every single week on Saturdays and Mondays. Go over digital assets, macroeconomics, global impact of markets, and what's coming down the pike. We do run private investments in the deal. We also have special guests that come in and talk about different investment strategies, how to run M&A deals, real estate, how to set up insurance policies, all that stuff. And we'll continue to provide value there as things progress, milestones are hit, and price appreciation happens. Let's see if I'm missing any more super chats before we wrap it up. We'll take 2 more over here on TikTok. Is 10,000 XRP enough? I don't know what price you're holding to. I don't know what your financial goals are. I don't know what your time horizon is. I don't know. There's just a lot of variables there for that to be enough or not enough. I will say if you held it for 10 years and they're $1 million a piece, that's probably enough for most people. So I just don't know what your time horizon is or what your goals are. So it's difficult for me to say. James Hall, appreciate you on Super Chat, brother. He says, Happy New Year. God bless. Thank you for tonight's info. Great live. Awesome, brother. Appreciate you here. And thank you for the kind words. And with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope you had a wonderful new year. We're safe, enjoyed time with your family. We will be back next Monday, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time for the live here. And if you're in the Mastermind, you'll be able to catch us Saturday morning at 9 a.m. for the 2-hour powwow that we have there, the town hall, where we go over all of the current investments in the group. A lot of the stuff we discussed here when it comes to LLCs, estate planning, different types of investments, everything that we can do on that front, and then macroeconomics and digital assets as a whole. So with that, like I said, we'll wrap it up. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will see y'all on the next one. Well, hold on. I forgot about this. If you do want to go check out the book, we do have it there on Amazon and Kindle for another 24 hours here for free. If you want to go download it, is Wealth in Numbers. Just Google that, Wealth in Numbers, Jake Claver or Max Avery, and that'll pull it up for you. God bless. And again, y'all have a great night.